Here's a quick look at what we're going to build in this video. We'll start with this single post design for our no sidebar layout. This will be built using the GeneratePress customizer and a little bit of CSS. I'll also show you how to easily add an author image to your post metadata. Next, we'll design this cool boxed content layout using the header element from GeneratePress Pro. You'll learn how to display the featured image in the header, along with the title, post meta, and author image. Then we'll style the content area to make it really pop off the page. Along the way, we'll also touch on setting up your menus and footer widgets, styling your blog archives, and even creating a custom drop cap for your posts. All right, let's get started. All right, so here we are on a pretty much fresh install of GeneratePress. All the theme settings are completely default. The only thing I have is I've added 4 dummy posts to help us style the archives and featured images and stuff. But that's pretty much it. So the first thing I always like to do on any new WordPress install, and specifically for GeneratePress, is if you go to themes, if you're not using a child theme, you should absolutely get the GeneratePress child theme, which I'll link that in the video description, and you can just install that. A child theme allows you to customize your theme and try multiple variations without tying your design to the actual parent theme. So you could install multiple child themes and have each one be slightly different and tweak them and go back and forth if you want. All your WordPress customizer settings will be tied to this child theme and not the parent theme. And you can go into the theme editor if you want and just rename your child theme. So we can call it GP Demo. And we can update and save that. And the other thing I like to do is go into settings, permalinks, and just make sure that your permalink settings are set to either post name or category post name. Those are pretty much the only 2 acceptable permalink structures these days for WordPress, and they're the most SEO friendly. Now for this demo, I'm going to be using GeneratePress Pro. Personally, I think that GeneratePress is pretty much only usable by non-professional developers if you're using the Pro version, because it gives you greater control and ease of customization over things like typography, colors, and stuff like that. Developers can use the base version of GeneratePress because they're going to be custom coding everything anyway. But if you're just starting out and you want to use GeneratePress, just invest the $50 and buy yourself a license. But for this demo, I will try to include some CSS code that you can use if you are using the base version of GeneratePress. So when I'm customizing, I typically like to start with the header and menu area, then I sort of do the container, and then I go to typography, and then I move on to smaller, finer details. So let's start like that. We'll go to the header and we'll go to the customizer. We'll go to layout, header, and I like the full width header. And the inner width, you can make it contained or full. You can't really see it with the customizer open. Or if I zoom out, you'll see that the full width inner header takes the logo all the way to the side of the page. I actually prefer it to be contained. And for now, we're going to leave the padding as it is, and we'll just change some colors. So I'm going to switch the background color to a nice blue. And we'll just paste that in there. And next up, you can see our site title disappeared. So we're going to change the site title color. And for now, I think I will make it this nice yellow color. And we're not showing the tagline, so we can leave that alone. And now maybe we want to just customize the site title. So we'll go back to site identity. And I'll just name it after my website, was to build that website. And we don't need the tagline, but we're hiding it anyway. And I won't put in a logo right now, but you can stick any sort of logo right there. And really quickly, if you wanted to change the site header background with CSS, you could go to Customizer, and we'll open additional CSS. And the class you want to target is just class site header. And you can go background color pink or something like that. All right, we'll delete that. And next up, let's do the menu. And even though there's not really any content on the site, we can sort of make a fake menu for planning purposes. So we'll go back to the WordPress dashboard and appearance menus. And then we can create a new menu. So we'll just add custom links, and I'll just do fake links, and we'll call it about, contact, resources, or something like that. And then we can call this the main menu, save menu, and we'll display in the primary menu location. And if we go back to our website here, you'll see that our menu now appears over here. and we can start customizing that. If we go to layout and then go to primary navigation, we can choose where our nav is located. So currently our navigation location is to float right, and this sort of puts it in the site header and it just floats it to the right of the logo. You could also do float left and it would be to the left of the logo. And a typical location is either above or below the header. You frequently see below header, and you'll see separate navigation down here. When I'm just starting a site and it's not too complex, I typically like to put the navigation to the right of the header for simplicity, so it's all in one line. And that way you can choose to do a sticky header, which sort of stays with you as you scroll, and that's something we can get into a bit later. So we're gonna do float right. And now we can start doing the colors for the navigation. And you can see currently the background color, if we change that color, I actually just want it to match the color of the header. So I'm going to change the color to transparent, and you can just do that by dragging the slider here. And now, of course, it's a bit hard to see our text, and we will get into that into the typography, but I can just show you really quick because you can click in the primary navigation controls. You can just click typography now, and we can go font weight. Maybe I want it to be a bit bolder so you can see it. And we can increase the font size a little bit. And then we'll go to colors, and we can change the text color to something a bit more visible. Let's go with white for now. For the background hover color, it's currently set to white, and I don't think that looks great. One thing you could do is maybe dial down the transparency, so it's just kind of like a subtle overlay as you hover over it. Or you could give it a different color, but also have the transparency so it looks like that. That's up to you. I'm going to go with the white with some transparency added. And we can make our text hover color perhaps match the site title there. So I'll just grab this yellow here and we'll see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. Now, if we go back and we're in the main navigation settings again, this header is kind of bulky for having a nav menu there. I kind of like, I'm not a big fan of chunky headers. I like sort of more slender headers. So I am just going to drop the menu item height, and you can see here you can increase the spacing between the menu items. I'm going to reset it to the default, and you can adjust the menu item height, making them taller or shorter. So I'm going to make them a bit smaller. Let's say 30 pixels high. You can also adjust it for the phone view too, the mobile header height, but it looks fine right now, I think. And lastly, you can set breakpoint. This is where it switches from the standard to the mobile menu. So as you shrink the page, you can see the mobile menu engages. And right now it's set to do that at about 768 pixels, which is sort of when you hit the tablet breakpoint on GeneratePress. And in general, I find that to be a good plan. I like the default, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. Now, one thing about changing the menu item height here is you'll see that it sort of shrinks it down, and we have this extra padding that's actually set by the header. So if you don't like this look and you want maybe your nav items to stretch closer to the full height of the header, then we could increase these menu item heights again, and we can go back to maybe we can go back to 50 pixels. And if we go to the header under layout, and you can see here header padding, we can decrease the top and bottom padding. And then now it's much narrower. And you can drop it all the way to 0 if you want. So these items are actually the full height of the header. But I'll go back to 5 pixels for now. I thought that looked pretty good. And we'll just click publish. Okay, now we can move on to the actual styling of our container. And if we just close the customizer for a second, we can sort of look at it. And by default, GeneratePress gives you this sort of box layout. Everything's on its own little card. And there's a subtle background that's gray, and I actually really like that nice gray color. And then you have white box content, and we can go to a post just to see how it looks. That was the home page, which is just displaying a list of blog posts. And there's a couple different ways you can approach designing your layout. Basically, you can either do sort of a fluid layout where you can't really see the boxes, or you can do box layout like this, and we'll style it. And I'll show you how to do both. I think first we're going to do sort of a more fluid layout where you don't see these outlines. So let's go to customize. And there's 2 ways you can do it. So first let's go to layout, and we'll go to container. And this is where you can adjust the width of the container. And I'll zoom out so you can see it a little bit better. But this is And the container width includes the sidebar. And the one thing that's bad about GeneratePress is it doesn't let you separately set the container width for pages that don't have the sidebar. So you're gonna have to do that with CSS, and I'll show you that a bit later. And you can choose your content layout, separate containers, or one container. My general preference is to set them as separate containers, and then we can style them to make them look like one container if you want. The content padding is the space around the content here. So if we increase this on the left side, you can see padding goes in, and you can link them and increase it all the way around. I'm just gonna go back to the defaults here. One note about content width or container width is it's generally a best practice to not have your text be so wide that it's hard to read the entire line. I think the rule of thumb is something like 55 to 75 characters per line. So I tend to like to keep my actual content width below 800 pixels if possible. And if I go over, I typically increase the font size to compensate. So I'm gonna go back to the default of 1200 pixel wide container for now, and we can customize that a bit later when we get into the individual posts. The other two controls you get are the content separator, which pulls down the content and title from the featured image. I'm just gonna go back to the default for now. And the separating space is the space between your sidebar and your content, so you can increase that to get it looking how you want. And of course, because they're both in the same container, as you increase the separating space, the content width actually decreases. So I'm gonna go back with the default for now, and we'll just save that. And let's start setting up our fluid layout. So the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is to go to Container, Colors, and you can see our container background color is white right now. Now, if we just change that to transparent, all of a sudden it's starting to look more fluid, and now we just have this box sidebar. And of course, you can do the same thing with the sidebar. We could change the sidebar colors and make the sidebar colors transparent as well. And now you have this fully fluid layout where you don't really see the content boxes. And the advantage of making them both transparent is that now you can completely change the color of your layout by just changing the body background color. So if we change the body background color to something like just pure white, it's not white, but if we change it to white, now you don't have to adjust these colors individually again. And I'll click Publish. All right, next up, we'll move on to typography. So in the customizer, we'll go to typography, and we can start with the body. Right now it's using the system stack, and this depends on what sort of device you're browsing on. Mac and Windows and Android and iOS, they each have their own default system font. And in general, they're meant to be very readable fonts. And the advantage of using system stack is it loads super fast. It's already in the browser, so they don't have to load an external font resource. So if you want a site that loads insanely fast, you can consider using the system stack font as your body font. But most people do customize this. And for now, I'm going to switch it to maybe a Google font. So we'll just go down. And I know Open Sans is a very popular, highly readable font. So we can switch it to that. And I'm going to increase the font size just a smidge to make it a bit more readable, maybe even 19 pixels. And you can uncheck the font weights that you don't need. For example, I typically do 300 italic. And then maybe we don't need these extra 700s here. Just because the more font styles you load, the more it slows down your website. And you can tweak the line height if you want, just to add a little bit more spacing between each individual line of a paragraph. The default is 1.5. In general, I think 1.6 to 1.7 looks good to my eye. And the paragraph margin is the spacing between each paragraph. I think that looks pretty good. So we'll leave that and we'll click Publish. And while we're here, we can also adjust the colors. So if you go to the body color settings, you can set the default link color. And this actually looks okay, but we're probably going to customize our links. And I'll just go with that slightly subtler blue for now. And you can adjust the text color if you want. Generally, black is a pretty good safe bet. You can do different shades of black, but of course that's gonna be less readable. So we're gonna stick it with the default, which is like a very dark gray, but not completely black. And we can adjust the link hover color. Black, I don't particularly like as a hover color, so we'll go start with blue and maybe find something like a nice purple or something. Okay, and we'll click Publish. Now, one thing I almost always do is I like to put a bottom border on my links, and that just makes them stand out from the page a little bit and makes it obvious to the user what's a link and what's not. And if you're running a sort of affiliate website or e-commerce site, you want them to click your links. You want to make them look like a link. So in order to do that, you actually have to use a bit of CSS. And it depends where you want to apply the rules. Do you want it to be all your links, including the sidebar, or do you want it just to be inside your content? So if you want it to be inside your content, we would make the CSS rule entry content A, and the A element is the link element, and our rule would just be border bottom 1 pixel solid. And if we write the rule like that, no matter what color you make your link color, it will just adjust to match. So for example, if we inspected it and we just changed our link color to something like this, the border matches no matter what. And you'll notice that the rule didn't apply to these links over here because the entry content container is only this area below here where like the body content is. If you want it to apply to all the links on the page, we could change the rule to the content container. And if you want to find that, you can go to the Chrome Inspector tools, and we can see up here, the site content is the wrapper that contains both of the sidebar and the main content, and the ID here is content. But I'm going to change it back to entry content because I really only want it for the links that are in paragraph text and stuff because it's really hard to see them. And we adjusted the body text, but let's just customize the header text a little bit. I find this to be very readable, but let's make something that sticks out a bit so you don't scan past the heading and not see it. So we'll go back to typography and headings. And let's try something like bangers, which is sort of an aggressive font, if you will. And we can adjust the font size. And I actually don't like that for my main heading. I want something a bit more standard for my main font, maybe like a bold open sans. For my H2 headings, we can try bangers. And we'll just up that font size a smidge. So yeah, there's no missing those. Now you will notice that when I changed the H2 headings, it also changed our widget heading font. And I don't really like that. I want sort of a more standard font over there. So if we go back to typography and we go to widgets, instead of widget titles inheriting it from whatever the default H2 font is, we can set around. So we can go back and do just system stack, and then I'll switch it back. Or we can do open sans and match the rest of our site. And that looks fine. We'll make it a bit bolder. Next up, we're going to customize this single post template. We're going to add some more design. We're going to put some shadow on the featured image, and we're going to put a author gravatar. We want to show an image with our author names, and we're going to do some other styling. But the first thing I want to do is show you how you can apply rules specifically to styles that do or don't have the sidebar. Unfortunately, GeneratePress combines the content with rules, regardless of whether you're doing a single sidebar, a no sidebar, or a dual sidebar layout. And that can sometimes make your content widths be too narrow or too wide. So we're going to have to customize that with CSS. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this post, and we're just going to change the default template, and we're going to change it from the default, which we've set as content sidebar, and we're just going to make it no sidebars. And if we go back to the front end here, you'll see that all of a sudden our content has gotten very wide because it's taking up not only the space that it occupied with the content area that came out to here, but it's also taking up the gap between the sidebar and also where the sidebar was. And in my opinion, this is just too wide for content. It's really hard to read if you've got, 120 characters on a line. But if you have sidebars on other layouts, you don't want to squish them by lowering your overall content width. So we're just going to do it with CSS. Now, there's two ways you can do it, and it comes down to personal preference about whether or not you want to compress the width of everything, including the title and the featured image, or you just want to decrease the width of the content below the title. So we're going to go to the customizer and additional CSS. And I'll just add a comment so I know what this rule does. And now we're going to go to our handy Chrome Inspector tools, and let me just zoom in a little bit so we can see better. And we're going to go to Inspector. And if we go up to the body here, you can see that WordPress or GeneratePress is adding a bunch of classes that we can use to target our rules. And one of the classes, if you can see it right here, is the no sidebar class. And so this lets us write any rule for layouts that don't have a sidebar on them. So that's going to be the start of our rule. So we'll go no sidebar. And then we have to choose the container we want to target. And we can either choose the inside article container would be a good one to choose, and that encompasses everything including the featured image. Or we could just target, for example, the entry content container, and that only contains the content below the featured title. So let's start with the inside article. And we can just change our width. So we'll go max width, and let's try 1,000 pixels. And you can see it's already decreased. Now, if we zoom out again, you'll notice that it's not aligned perfectly. It's there's this big gap over here. If I close the customizer, this layout is now off balance. There's more space on the right side than there is on the left. So we can fix that easily by adding one rule. And the rule is we just need to add auto margin to the left and the right. So we can just go auto margin right auto. And this will automatically center your content in the container. And if you wanted to only apply the rule to this content and have this be a bit wider, we can just change this rule to entry content. All right, and next up, I'd like to jazz up our post design a little bit more. And we're gonna add what looks like a custom post header with some color background and put the title behind the background and style the featured image. And if you're using GeneratePress Pro, you can easily do this with the Elements feature of GeneratePress, which I'm going to show you how to do later, but you can actually sort of fake it just with pure CSS, and it's really not that hard. So we're going to create a pseudo element, and we're going to sort of make it take up this space behind the featured image and the title up here. So the way to do that is first we need to make our rule body position relative. And this allows us to create a pseudo element that we can position relative to the body. And then we're going to go body before. This creates the pseudo element. And we have to do this rule. And I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about so you can see it. We're going to go up to our body here. And to create your pseudo elements, you just click content, quotes, and you saw the flash. And now this before element has sprung into existence. And now we need to give it some width and some height. So we're going to call it width 100%. Height, we'll start with 600 pixels and see how that looks. And we're going to make it a block element. And now it's taking up all the space and pushing our header down. And obviously that's not what we want. But if we just change it to position absolute, those problems all go away. Now we can't really see our element. It's still there and it's covering our featured image. And we can just add a background color just so we can see it and work with it a little bit better. So we'll go background color and we'll go with this color for now. And now of course our problem is it's covering the featured image, which is not what we want. So we're going to use the z-index, and z-index is sort of the third dimension of web design. If this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, the z-index pulls things closer to us or further away. And so we're going to set the z-index to actually negative and just move it behind all the other content. So we're going to go z-index -1. And now our nice box is sitting behind our featured image there. And one other thing we want to do, I know I haven't specified a position other than absolute, and it's sitting exactly where I want it, but just to be safe, in case something else breaks this layout, we would just want to make it align to the top and the left 0. So that will just sort of anchor it to the top left corner of our content here. And we'll click publish to save those changes. All right, and now that we've got this, there's a bunch of stuff you could do. For example, you could adjust the height so it looks like it's taking up maybe half of the featured image. And we could just tweak that until it was looking about right. Like that. You could add a border bottom there just to sort of match your site header there and just add a little bit more style. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move the title up there and just sort of give the illusion of having like a custom page header. To do that, we have to go to Layout, Blog, and then we need to go to the Single section. Actually, I believe we need to go to Featured Images and on Posts, and then you choose the location of the featured image. And this may only be a GeneratePress Pro feature. So if you're on the free version of GeneratePress, you're going to have to ask their support team for the custom PHP code to move the title. But we're just going to change below the title. So that moves the title up there. And now, of course, we're going to have to do a bit of typography to make that more visible. We actually don't want to change this rule for all our posts because not all our posts have this layout. So we're going to have to write the rule with CSS. So to inspect it, we just want this to be the H1 entry title. And of course, that's for the no sidebar layout. So we'll go back to our customizer. And we're going to make a rule H1, which is class entry title. Oop. And of course, it has to be only for no sidebar. And we just want to change the color. And let's match it to our site header up there. So we'll try that. And if you wanted to get a little funky, you can maybe add some text shadow or something. Just to have it pop off the page a little bit. All right, now let's style this featured image. And I'm gonna actually start by doing it in the inspector. And that's because it's actually a lot easier to add box shadow and sort of see how it looks in the Chrome Inspector tool. So we're gonna go down, we're in the featured image class, and then we have the image here. So we're gonna go, our rule will be featured image, and then we're actually targeting the image inside that div. And let's start with box shadow. And I already know what I want, so I'm just gonna type it in. But if we click on this icon right here, you can sort of tweak all these values. So you can move the box shadow around and see how it looks. Maybe you want that, and you think that looks a little bit better off to the side. You can change the blur radius to make it blur over a longer or shorter distance. You can do no blur radius at all, and then you sort of get this like offset. And by default, it uses black as the color, but we could specify a color. So we can just start with gray and tweak from there. You could use this yellow color and see how that matches the rest of our theme. But I'm just gonna go with what I originally had there, which was, I believe, and that's sort of a nice subtle effect. And I'm just gonna up my base color a little bit. And if you like that color and you just want a little accent, we could actually add like a border bottom. And just try that for a little bit of flair. Or you could put it all the way around the outside and see if you like that instead. And you can just play around with the colors. I love Chrome Inspector tools. And just see what looks best to you. All right, but I'm gonna go back with the border bottom there. And we can just now copy this rule and add it to our customizer. And we're gonna have to tweak this rule a little bit, just like the other ones, to make sure it only applies to pages that have this sort of no sidebar layout. So we'll just make it no sidebar featured image. And we'll click publish. All right, I'm gonna show you how to add your author Gravatar along with the post date and name. But first, I just wanna show you a couple of tweaks that you can make to this layout. So first off, because of our targeting, this rule is gonna appear on any post that doesn't have a sidebar. So that'll be true across any category, and it's gonna show on both posts and pages. So what if we want this rule to only apply to certain categories of posts? Well, we can do that. I'm just gonna show you how. If we go to the inspector, and WordPress adds a category tag, but it doesn't add it to the body, it adds it to your article. So we're gonna have to change our rules a little bit. And so this is the space category, and so we have the class category space. So just to show you what I mean, I have another post that has this exact same, I have another post where there's no sidebar. And if we just go over here, you can see that it looks the same, even though it's in a different category. So maybe we want this rule to only apply to the space category. So we can go, so let's go to our Chrome inspector, and you can see we have this category space class that's applied to the article. Now it's not applied to the body class up here where we created our before element, but that's okay. We can actually move our before element to the article class and then target it based on these category classes. And the reason we can do that is because we've still set body position relative. And so that is where our before element is going to be anchored to. It will still get anchored to the nearest ancestor that is positioned relatively. So if we change our rule to article before, you can see that nothing changes. It's still being anchored properly. And now we can make our rule different. So we can make it only apply to, so we can change our rule so it only applies if the category is space. Article, which is also category space before. And we'll save our changes. And if we go back and refresh this page, you can see that pseudo element is gone. Now the problem is that we have to also adjust these rules to only be on the space category as well, or else it's going to look kind of silly. But you could leave this and maybe just change the pseudo element color or something on each layout, but we're just going to change them all. So we just need to change this rule, category space, and change this rule. And the trick is you just have to make sure that your classes are nested properly. So this is a body class, no sidebar, and this is the article class, which is inside the body. So we have to make sure it's nested properly. And if we publish that and go check our page again with a refresh, it should just look like the default. And as far as other tweaks, I know I've sort of made it's a bit of a masculine layout, but it's really simple to change the way it looks simply by changing the background colors. So if we go to the Chrome inspector, and you can make it a lovely shade of pink. And if we change our title color to something perhaps white, you can see that the entire layout has been changed. And of course, you would probably change the border bottom here to be something else too, or you could change the look of that image border entirely. So for example, if we change the color and then just put a nice white border around it, keep the shadow the same, it looks completely different. So it just shows how you can find a sort of layout that works for you, and you can use it across multiple sites or designs and merely just tweak a couple colors and it looks completely different. So one tweak you could even make is you could make it a gradient or put an image even inside your pseudo element. So we can try. The nice thing about trying gradients in the Chrome Inspector tool is it sort of fills it out for you if you forget the syntax to type it in. So we can just hit tab as we started typing linear gradient, and then I'll just copy this color as the first step. And you could just keep it like that, or we could paste this again as the second step and just sort of tweak it to see how we like it. Change the rotation, move it around, see how it looks. And one last tweak I want to show you is regarding the responsiveness of this. And by default, it actually looks pretty good as you lower the screen size. The only thing you'll notice is eventually the pseudo element background sort of becomes a little bit unbalanced. And on some layouts, maybe the text would start to overlap this, and you don't want that because it's gonna be hard to read once it goes up there. So there's a couple ways to fix this. If you're worried about the text overlapping that, you could just merely give the entry content a background to make sure that the background, make this container have a white background. So even if it did overlay, you'd still be able to read the text. And the other option is to make sure that you don't want the height to be proportionally too large relative to the width. And so we can use the view window unit. So we're going to target, we can just put our rule right inside our before elements. So we can write our rule max height, and we'll make it 80 view window units. And that's 100 view windows is the full width of the page. So it can never be wider than the 80%. Sorry, it can never be higher than 80% of the width. And so now if we resize, you'll see that once it hits that breakpoint, it starts to shrink and looks like it stays more or less right where you want it. And that's a nice way to avoid media queries and sort of trickier CSS stuff like that. So we'll publish that, and let's get on started with this Gravatar. So we're going to add an image to our Gravatar here and style it a little bit just to make it look more professional. The first step, obviously, is to go to your user profile and make sure you have a Gravatar. You can either use the WordPress official Gravatar, but that requires a Gravatar account, or I'm using a plugin called Simple Local Avatars to just upload a Gravatar. And now if we go back to our page, we can actually get the code required to do this, and it does require PHP, but GeneratePress, their help docs actually have the exact code you can put in, including some CSS styling, and I'll put the link to this directly in the video description, but we're literally just going to copy this code. So you can put this right in your functions PHP, or if you have like a PHP Snippets plugin, that might be a safer way to do it. Just remember that PHP is tricky, and if you forget a semicolon, it can take down your whole site. So make sure you know how to get access via FTP or whatever. Just make sure you know how to fix your site if you do accidentally enter the code wrong. But we're just going to do it the sort of hacky way, and we're going to go to the theme editor and make sure you're in your child theme, which we are, GP demo, and we're going to go to theme functions. And in the functions.php, we're just going to paste that code, and we'll click update file. And now if we refresh our page here, you'll see that the avatar is there. Now it's not styled at all or anything, so we do want to tweak that, and we can just copy the CSS snippets right from here, and we'll just put it in our customizer. And I'll put a little comment so we know what it's for. And there you go. I want to make that look a little bit bigger, so let's make that 35 by 35, and we'll click publish. And now I think we probably need to adjust the styling of this just so it looks better against the background. So, and again, we want to tailor our rule to be just specific to this post type or posts that are going to have this sort of background on here. So we'll make it no sidebar, category space, and we're targeting the entry meta, and we'll make it color white. And if you want to adjust the link color as well, add it for an A element, which is the link element, and we'll make it color white also, or whatever color you want. And you could make it, for example, font weight bold or something to make it stick out. And one other thing is if you wanted to give your little Gravatar image a border just to make it stick out from the page a little bit, go border, 2 pixels solid white, something like that. And I think we want to give it a little bit more margin from our entry header there. So we can just make this rule apply to all the entry titles. And we'll say margin bottom, maybe 25 pixels, just for some extra space. And we'll click publish. All right, and now let's build a custom page header the official GeneratePress way using the Pro Elements module. And we're going to use the GeneratePress Pro Elements header module. So if you go to your dashboard and you go to Appearance, so first we'll go to Appearance, GeneratePress, and you need to make sure that the Elements module is activated here. If it's not, you can activate it, and then you can go to Elements, and now we'll add a new element. So we're going to create a header element. And we're going to call it our animals header. We're just going to put it on the animals post category. All right, so let's start and think about what we want to put in this header. I think I want to replace the sort of main title that goes inside the post content area. So I want to have the post title, and I want the post author and date, and then I want to put maybe some design, either background or a background image. So let's just start with our post title. And the nice thing about these magic template tags is anytime you insert them in your header, so if you just put the post title here, it will magically remove the post title from your content and move it here. So it won't show up twice, which is great. But you do have to add the HTML markup. So if you want your post title to be an H1 heading, you have to put the H1 tags in. And then next up, we're going to have our author and date. So let's just wrap that in a little div, and we'll call it post meta or something like that. And we'll just keep it super simple. Just grab this, just a little wrapper div for each of these, just to make it a little easier to style later if you want to. And I'll grab the post date as well. And we'll paste that. All right, we'll click publish to save changes. And now it tells us that we need some display rules because it doesn't know where to display the heading. So let's go through these settings first. It's a good idea to add a class to your elements, and this allows them to be styled separately instead of having rules only apply to all of your header elements. So we're going to call this our animal header. And I do want it to be full width with the inner content contained, so we'll leave that for now. And as a background color, you can try that nice blue color for now. The text color, I guess I probably want to be black in there. And the link colors, we'll have to see. I'm not quite certain. Maybe we'll try yellow for now. And we'll mess with the link color cover in a little bit. So let's give this some display rules and tell it to show up on our page. And the location I want is a specific category. And you can choose entire site. You can choose specific post tags or even custom post types, but I'm going to go by category. And the category I want to use is the delusional animals category. And we'll just click update to save that change. Now, if we refresh the page here, our page heading appears right there. Now, as you can see, this output is pretty bland. There's no real spacing and no real styling. Our author and date are sort of stacked on top of each other, and it just doesn't look overall very pleasing. So let's style this a bit. So the first thing I want to do is adjust the padding settings, and we're going to add some top and bottom padding just to give it some space. So let's go 80 pixels on the top and 80 pixels on the bottom. And you can adjust this separately for the mobile and desktop view, but right now we're just going to start with desktop. We'll refresh again. All right, that looks much better. Now this is a good start. I mean, it's pretty basic, but we have the content elements that we want. And of course we can kick this up a notch. For example, we can actually move this featured image up into this post header, and we'll do that in a bit, but first let's style our output here. So let's go to our inspector, and you can see that it's created this is the element here. It's the page hero. It's a div of class page hero, and it also has added our custom class, the animal header class. So we're going to use that to style our content. So we'll open the WordPress customizer, and we'll go to additional CSS. And the first thing I want to do, so let's add a comment just so I know what section of my code this is, and we'll call it animal post header. And the first thing I want to do is I want to put these next to each other instead of stacked on top of each other. So if we go inspect this element here, you can see that these are div elements, and by default a div element is a block and it takes up the entire width of the content area. So we want to change them to inline block. So we're going to use our animal header class to target this only to this post. And we're going to target the post author div, and we're also going to do animal header post date. And the rule we want is display inline block. And now they're lined up nicely next to each other. And just to give them a little bit more space, maybe we could do something like padding right 10 pixels just to give them a little separation. Next up, maybe I don't want the post title to stretch the full length over the sidebar. Maybe I want it to be sort of constrained over the top of the main content. So we can set a max width to that. So we'll target our animal header H1, and we'll just say max width 1000 pixels. And now it's the same width as the content area below it. You can't see it, but the content box is actually right about there. Now, if you're wondering if you can put your featured image in this header, yes, you can. And let's do that now. So we'll go back to our edit header settings, and you can scroll down, and for the background, it gives you the background color as an option, but you can also choose a background image. And if you click this, you can choose a custom image, and that would basically be the same image everywhere this header is displayed, or you can dynamically pull the featured image from the post that it's being displayed on. So we'll choose featured image. You can upload a fallback image if you want, just in case the post doesn't have a featured image, and this is good practice. Otherwise, it will default to the background color, I believe. And we can set the background position. Let's start with just center and see how that looks. All right, so let's just update this real quick and see how it looks on the front end. So here's our new header, and you can see the image is sort of being stretched over the entire width of the top. And so you're gonna have to make sure that you use pretty high quality images to make sure they don't look super blurry if you stretch them. But obviously we need to adjust our text colors so they show up, and maybe we can do a couple other things. So first off, let's go back here. And the first thing we want to do is you can see that it's displaying the featured image in both places, and most likely you actually only want to display it in one place. So we can set it to disable the featured image anytime it's being used in the header. And if we click update and refresh this page, you can see the featured image is gone now and it's just showing up here. So that's a good start. And the next thing we can do is we can add an overlay. And basically it allows you to use the background color as your overlay so if you add an overlay to the image, this can help text show up better and more consistently regardless of whatever the color of the background image is. So we're going to switch that on. And if we hit update and go back to the front end, you're going to see that it's just been replaced by a solid color. So we actually need to set a transparency in our background color. And to do that, you can just drag the slider. And we're going to adjust the overall color too. So maybe we'll do like a kind of a dark navy as the overlay, and we'll check and see how this level of transparency looks, and you can just keep tweaking it. So we'll hit update and refresh. And I think I probably want it to be a little bit less blue and more gray. So we'll try that, and maybe a bit less transparency. Or a bit more transparency, that's what I should say. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do, obviously, is change the text color because we can't see it against this background. And of course you can do this with CSS, but there's actually a built-in text color option in the page header options. And so if we change the text color here, and I would just go with white, I think. And if we click update and refresh, you can see that our text is now a nice visible white. And of course we can style this further. So we already have our animal header H1 rule here, and we can just add something like font size 50 pixels just to make it a little bit bigger. And we could add some text shadow. That might be a bit bold for our needs, but we can sort of tweak that to get it to look how you want. So we can try that, and we'll just copy that color and paste it into our CSS rule here and click publish, and that should be saved. Now I think I'd like to show a little bit more of this image, so maybe we can add a little more padding. All right, that looks better. All right, and now let's style our post metadata here, and you'll notice that the Gravatar that we set up in the previous post isn't here anymore. But if we check the header, and if we just deleted the post author here, and check it back, refresh, it appears if the post author is down here, but because it's being removed and moved up here, it's been taken out of the loop and our previous PHP code doesn't work. So let me show you how to get it working. So let's go back to our header and we'll put the post author back. And you can't write PHP code inside the header element, but what you can do is use a shortcode. And so I've actually copied a shortcode from the GeneratePress help files, and I'll put it in the video description. And it's simply this: we're just going to create a shortcode, which is called the Page Hero Gravatar shortcode. So if we just copy this, and we're going to want it to go right here. I already created a spot for it. And we'll just put the brackets around it, Page Hero Gravatar, click update, and if we refresh, it's right there. And now we can start styling it. All right, now that we got it there, we can start to style it. And if we just inspect the content here, we can see our class we want to target is the author avatar. So animal header, author avatar, display inline block, and that'll move it next to our other ones. And then to make these items the same height as our image, which is 40 pixels high, I'm just going to give them a line height of 40 pixels. It's a little trick. So we'll go line height 40 pixels for the post author and post date. And they're still not lined up, and that's because we need to use vertical align on our image. So let's try going vertical align middle. And now everything's lined up nicely. So let's add a little bit of spacing. We can put some margin right on our image here, and we'll say 15 pixels, maybe 10 pixels. And then we can just put maybe a border radius to round out our image. So, all right, that looks pretty good. And if you wanted, we could put just a little separator in between our date and our author name. So okay. I think that looks pretty good. All right, and the last thing we're going to do on this post is we're going to make a little bit of a boxed layout. If that's something you're interested in, where you sort of box off the content. So let's inspect our element here. And it looks like what we want to target is the inside article class. And you can see that's being set to transparent. And we set that transparent separately in our customizer. So we can go back to the customizer settings and we'll go to colors, content. And for our background, instead of transparent, we are going to make it white. Now let's add some CSS. So we are going to, we'll put a comment that calls this our content sidebar box layout. And we're just going to make this our default layout for any post that is has the content and then sidebar. So if we inspect the body classes, we can see this is the default template and this is a single post. So let's target both those classes just to make sure we don't override any other templates. So our rule will be post template default, which is also a single post. So we'll keep no space between the period and the other element because they're both in the same element, the body element. And we're going to add maybe a border just so we can see where it is. Oop. And I forgot one thing. We're targeting the inside article. So now there's our border. And what we want to do is actually sort of lift this up and make it overlap the header a little bit for a cool effect. So we're just going to put some negative margin on it. So margin top, let's try minus 150 pixels and see how that looks. I think that's too far. All right, that looks better. And maybe we'll dial it back to 100 pixels actually. And if you want to give it a little bit of lift off the page, we could give it some box shadow. All right, so it just has a little bit of lift. Maybe we could give it a little bit more blur radius just to spread a little bit further. And what we may want to do here is we could actually go back to the nice gray background and see what that looks like to give you a little more separation for the sidebar and the content. So let's go back to our colors and we'll go to body. And for our background color, we're going to go over to the default, which is F7, F8, F9. And I think that looks good. And if I'm being a picky, I think there's a little bit too much white space up at the top of the page here. So we can just add one more rule, post template default. And if we inspect, what we actually want to move up is this entry content and get rid of the margin at the top there. Margin top 0. And that looks good. All right, and one finishing touch, just for fun, is if you want to do a cool little drop cap, like a sort of a block element, you can do that with a plugin or a shortcode, but it's also easy to do with CSS. And we'll apply this to all our posts. It doesn't need to be specific to this post. So we'll do any single post, and we're going to target inside the entry content, the first paragraph, which is the first child, which is the first letter. And we're going to go display block, float left, and you'll see it moved already. And now you really see a change when we change the font size. Let's try 70 pixels. Font weight, 800. And we need to change the line height so it fits better alongside the content. So let's try line height 70 pixels. There we go. Some right margin. And you can give it some text shadow. And we could use this nice color here just to match everything else in the theme. Copy that. Okay. And I think we probably need to dial back the margin a little bit. That looks better. That looks good. That's a big change from the sort of the default post when we came here. All right, now one last thing I realized is this only works on pages where we have this page header. Otherwise, you're gonna be pulling up the content too high over the menu here. So we just need to make sure that this rule right here where we're pulling this up, this only applies to single posts that are in this category. So I believe, I'll see if I can do it from memory. It's the category delusional animals. All right. And that will make it so that if we go to this page here, this was before the content was being pulled up off the screen. And if we refresh, it should look normal. And we could pull this other stuff out and only make that rule for just the margin top rule. Let's copy this, paste that, and then we can put this back the way it was. And if we refresh this, we'll have to delete that too. Now if we refresh, you still get the nice box layout on your other posts. You just don't have the negative margin that pulls it up too high. All right, so I think that looks good. All right, and then I want to correct one error here. It turns out that the post template default is gets injected on all pages even if there's no sidebar. So you can see that this is now affecting the page we built previously. So we can just change this rule. We're going to make it any body class that is not the class no sidebar. And that will leave our box shadow and border on this post. But if we refresh this page over here, it should be gone and back to normal. All right, next we'll clean up our archive template. And right now our blog page is actually the home page because we haven't changed it from the WordPress default. And you can see it's got every post in here in a couple different categories. And if you'll notice, this blue header that we created in the initial page is actually showing up on our home page. And the reason that is because each post that gets injected actually has some of the body classes that we targeted with our CSS. So we need to modify that rule that we made previously just to make sure it doesn't show up on the home page. And sometimes when you do custom CSS, you do have to fix little glitches. And this is why you should always test stuff on a staging server before you're going live. That's why I love Cloudways as a web host, because you can test everything on their staging feature and then push it to live easily. So let's go up. And the thing we want to target is the before element we created earlier. And we just want to make sure that this only occurs on pages where it has the single post class. So if we change our rule and click publish, you can see it's gone from the home page. But if we open that page, it's still there. All right, that's fixed. Now let's go on to styling our archives. So we can go to the customizer and we'll go to layout, blog. And right now the content type, it's showing 55 words. And just content as the excerpt, or it would show the excerpt if you had an excerpt specified on the post, and it's showing the full featured image. And I kind of want to dial it down. I like sort of tidier archives that are easier to scroll through. So we're going to style the archives, and first let's do the featured image. So you can choose to display or not display the featured image. I think we're going to display it, but let's make it a bit smaller. So I want to put it aligned to the right. Actually, let's go line to the left. And media attachment size, something smaller. Let's try the medium size. And I actually want to put it on the right. That way you can read the text first. And you can see that our code that the PHP code also hooks into the archive page. So it shows the author name, the comments, and our little Gravatar. I'm going to leave that. I think that looks good. And we can adjust the word count, so we can make it like 26 words or something. Pick a number that looks about right. And you can show whether to show the read more as a button, if you want people to have like that CTA button, or you can remove the read more label entirely and just have them click on the post title or the image. I think we'll display it as a button. We can choose whether we want to display this metadata or not. For example, we could remove the comment count, and we'll just leave the post date and the avatar. Let's put a little border on our little cards here to make them pop up from the background a bit. All right, and then the class I want to target here, we're going to go with the blog body class and inside article, and also archive inside article. And our rule is we're just going to say border 1 pixel solid. Great. We could decrease this padding if we want, but I think it looks okay. Let's just change this button color. So we can go to colors and buttons, and we can just change this to a nice blue. All right, and then last up, I think let's just customize the footer, and we'll just do a basic footer here. So we can customize this text on here and the copyright, and maybe we can add a widget, and I can show you how that works. So we'll go to customize, and first up, you can go to layout and then footer, and here you can choose, if we scroll down, whether you want a contained footer or full width. I think full width looks better. And you can choose a number of widgets. You could choose 1 widget and it'll be centered. You could choose 2 and side by side, 4 widgets, etc. We'll go with the default 3 for now. And back to top button if you want that. It's a nice feature that sort of scrolls with your content and just lets the user quickly go back up to the top. We'll leave that enabled for now. In copyright, we can just grab this and it'll say copyright buildthatwebsite.com, and we can insert the year. Actually, I think probably looks better the other way. And we'll click publish, and then we can add a widget. So let's go back here to widgets, and then you can go to footer widget, and we could maybe do footer widget 3, and we could add a widget, and yeah, we could put a list of our categories in there. And it looks like that. And so this all is basically above this footer down here. So this is sort of the sub footer, which only contains the copyright information, and then we have like the footer. So we could put that. You could put maybe a little about widget. And in the first widget spot, who knows, you could put, we could just put maybe a search form. And we'll click publish. And we can, of course, style that. So if we go back to layout, footer, and then go to colors, we probably want to change the background color to something else. We could do that, or we could go with that yellow that we had before. Now, after all that, you're probably wondering, how fast does this site load? After all, we've got these big bulky images on our page and stuff. Well, let's go find out. And keep in mind, I'm not using any caching plugins or anything on the site. It's Cloudways, where I'm hosting this, does come with a free caching plugin, but I haven't installed it on this install. So this is just sort of default Cloudways on the cheap $10 plan. And we're just going to go to GTmetrix. And copy this URL. How's that for a page score? Loading in A's and 100% across the board. And if we go to our waterfall, it's loading in 872 milliseconds, so less than 1 second load time. So if you want to know if GeneratePress is fast, yes, it is. In fact, the only thing that slows it down is just loading it up with a whole bunch of plugins. So make sure you only use the plugins you need. And once you learn some of these custom CSS tricks and tips, you can avoid adding some plugins that really just sort of add unnecessary bulk to your site. Now, Cloudways is where I host the bulk of my websites. And if you want to check it out for free, you can get a 3-day free trial and save 20% off your first month by using my link, which is cwdeal.com. Or you can check out this video right up here, which will walk you through step by step how to set everything up on Cloudways and get super fast speeds. This tutorial is just the first in an upcoming series of GeneratePress videos, so make sure you subscribe and click that bell to be notified when they come out. And please, if you've got suggestions for tutorials or video ideas, let me know what you want to learn and I'll make it happen. Now to keep learning, check out this video right here, which I handpicked just for you. Thanks.